The social contract is the basic principle that individuals and governments have certain rights and responsibilities to one another. In a nutshell, people pay taxes, and the government gives us schools, roads, hospitals, and the fire department. That sounds like a fair deal, but when was the last time we updated the contract? When was the last time we asked fundamental questions about how our society is run and what changes we should make? Who goes to jail and why? What do we learn in school and why? What does the military do and why? We, or at least I, have a tendency to think about the topic or the scandal of the day and not the underlying issues that create them in the first place. Hopefully, through this conversation, we can attempt to answer some of those fundamental questions and redraw the social contract. And this sort of brings me to the final point that I wanted to discuss, the next point that I wanted to discuss. And this is the concept of invading yourself. So I'm looking right now at the web page for the Canadian Armed Forces, and I scroll down, and it's what interests you, and there's this whole section: networking and information systems, air operation, logistics and transport, maintenance, healthcare, engineering, combat, public affairs, operations. And it's this, and I'm like, oh, these are all relevant, useful skill sets where you would want to have someone, and this is why you'd want to be in the military. But I'm like, why are we going to train all these people and then send them to other countries to get involved in ridiculous military operations? Don't all of those skill sets, aren't they required at home? You know what I mean? It's every time I see a video about how the Canadian Army can do anything, they're just up for the challenge. And then I'm like, well, we've got a housing crisis in this country. You know what I mean? Can we use those efforts towards this? I'm not even going to talk about the water in Flint, Michigan. I'm not even going to talk about the water in our Aboriginal communities. But it's if we're going to invade someone, shouldn't it be ourselves? Because we're just not, we've got so many areas where we need to help ourselves, and we're just not in a position to preach to other people in other countries when we're imperfect ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think you've summed up a lot of the thoughts on that topic specifically. I think uh, it's hard to really convey because it's just, but I think it speaks to the ideology. It's I think we're asking these questions, but I think it's this is a feature of the system.
Right.
This is a feature of the system. This is not outside of the system. This is part of the system. As I began by explaining the military, the role of the military is to expand empire. That's you can't go away from that. You're trying to realize the ideals of that nation. And even though we talk about, oh, we're trying to secure you, we're trying to secure by spending so much money on our military, we're trying to keep you safe and secure. Mm-hmm. Sure. And if we go we go with that line of thinking, sure, foreign wise, I am not in the rooms talking about the national security threats that are coming to Canada. I have no clue. I can't tell you because I don't know. So I'm sure there are national threats that we don't know about, that if we knew, we would shit our pants.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that as I have high respect as somebody who's been in the battlefield. I know kind of the experience of what that's like and the stress that comes with that, not just as a civilian, but sadly as a child, somebody who was put into that position. There will always be someone needed to do a role that civilians can't do. Absolutely. As a soldier, it takes a certain mindset to be given a gun to kill. No human being can be prepared or know what it's like to be in that position and the consequences of that position. It takes a certain type of person to be in that place. So there's a level of respect I have of people in military, because it takes a certain type of mindset to be able to subordinate yourself towards power, to do what you were told, and leave every aspect of your individualism aside to achieve a certain goal. There's a certain level of mindset that comes with that. Yeah. But separating that and the fact that you're being sent as a soldier, as that individual, you're a tool to achieve a certain goal of that nation.
Mhm.
You can't go away from that, and there's a certain violence to that that just is so insidious as a nation that we are okay with that, because
Mhm.
as much as you might keep me safe from some certain type of foreign invasion or certain type of foreign threat that I don't see, you
Mhm.
are also causing a threat internally that you are not seeing, right? But us spending so much money on the military, we don't spend money on our infrastructure, we don't spend money on our healthcare, we don't spend money on other social good, that leaves us very vulnerable. And we are seeing that, especially in the United States, as a prime example, because the world spends about 1 trillion, 1.9, 1.4 to 1.9 trillion dollars a year just on the military alone. Every like this is, and it's been going up exponentially. And in the US, you're noticing they spend about 17% of their national budget is on that. And then globally, the US spends 36% of that 1.4 trillion. The US spends 36% of it on the military. So, which is crazy when you start thinking of the amount of money that we're talking about. But what you're seeing in the US is a deterioration of that society, because more and more they keep like exponentially like increasing their spending on the military, decreasing their social spending. And what is that
Yes.
causing? Right, look at the
Yeah.
social tensions that it creates in a society with more poverty, with less safe. And then the people who have been traumatized in these wars, that, as you said, they have not been given the support mentally or physically to be able to deal with these things. When they come back, where do they end up?
On the
In
streets.
nationalistic, like the Proud Boys. A lot of some of the members, one of the guys who trained those Proud Boys was a Canadian military guy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very uh, one of the ugliest things to look at in your in this country is to see just how you only have to look this far and then you bump up against hardcore white
Mm.
supremacy.
Yeah.
And we like to say, oh, we're better than America. Oh, we don't have the KKK. All you have to do, just two little Google clicks,
Hmm.
and then you'll see what's really going on.
Yeah.
You know,
Right. Yeah. And we talk about the, you started off by talking about how, sadly, the one of the stains on our Canadian military
Mhm.
is of course the fact that the sexual misconducts and the sexual allegations
Yes.
that have been levied against the people, superior people in positions of power within our military. But there was just before that, there was an article detailing very specifically how white supremacists are very prevalent in the Canadian military.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
so,
And RCMP
and our
and
CMP, members of
OPP.
our police, or like even the the Ottawa police, my God, if people
100%.
knew the thoughts that the members of the Ottawa Police Department have, like
Yes.
they would make your skin crawl. Like, these are people who have given a weapon, and we've given them state sanctioned powers to kill.
Mhm.
and and these are the people that are keeping us safe. And so the idea of safety for me, I think, as just to kind of like add sort of like a positive thought to this, because I think when you it becomes really hard to really imagine yourself, even though like I'm very respectful and I have a lot of friends and people that I know in the military, and I respect them
Yeah,
very highly. It becomes really
absolutely.
hard to just like differentiate between the goodness of it and the really awful and insidious aspects of it. It becomes really challenging.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. It's so, again, tying it back to like the power of propaganda and the power of words is, if you were to just listen to the leaders speak, leaders of the US military, Canadian military, you'd think that all they do is women's literature in Afghanistan. You think all they do, you think they just run libraries in Afghanistan all day long and play soccer with the kids in Mali. How much soccer do you play? You know what I
Well, every morning wake up and
mean?
Mohammed and Shadia come and we play soccer all the day.
We have- We plant some
Then I
tomatoes in
take
the
them.
garden.
Yeah, have a book. We read to them, and it's all good.
It's all, yeah, it's. I was like, before we were talking, I was listening to this presentation again by the chief of defense staff, and this whole thing is talking about how he is encouraging his officers to learn a new language and immerse themselves in a different part of the world so they can see the world from a different point of view. And I'm like, yeah, that's a really good thing. So
Hmm.
stop dropping bombs on people. Like, what the fuck? Like it's so like, I'm like, yeah, you said it. Like, I'm
Yeah.
with you, brother. Like, so then stop killing people, and we can go to all the language conferences in the world. Like, it's just very, and like, they'll even specifically say, they're like, the reason why we want the Canadian military to work with other nations is so that our officers have person to person relationships with other countries, so that tensions don't get too high, because like, oh, I know you, I have your phone number, we used to kick it together. So like, these are the reasons why Canada's army officers and navy officers should be diverse and link up with all kinds of, and I'm like, yes, you are saying all of the
The
right thing.
right things. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, if the Canadian Army only did that, organized conferences for people to meet up and get to know each other, that'd be a wonderful thing. But I think we could all agree that's not what the Canadian Army does. You know what I mean?
No.
Like, and it's like, so you know better. So it's like, they know. Like, they're talking about, you have to learn a new language. They're talking about how nothing is done overnight, and we can't just impose our will. We have to be respectful and it's just like, your actions are the polar opposite. And it's
Mhm.
like, it's so, because like, go on the Army's YouTube page, Instagram page, website, and they're just saying all the right things about develop, like, air ambulances in Mali, and helping this, and being part of an international UN mission, and uh, anti-piracy in the Pacific. And you're like, okay, these are all good things that should do. But then it's like, the actions are just the opposite, and then it's just like, there's no accountability, and then it's like, someone is convicted of something wrong, but then they don't even have to get fired, they just stay in their same job,
Yeah.
and it's
Like
just like,
imagine the the sniper who was killing people in Afghanistan. Like he was convicted by the military court of murder. He was just killing Afghani civilians willy-nilly, and yet Trump, he released him from prison. He gave him an apology, the presidential apology, and the guy is out. And the guy was bragging about, and this is the really terrible part of it. The guy was bragging about how he was killing civilians, and I'm just like, really, like, ah, hard, hard to stomach that. It's so hard to stomach it at all.